Patrick Custer, thanks for doing this, man. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Welcome.
I'm really excited to be here.
Welcome back.
Back home.
Yeah. So introduce yourself first.
Well, I'm Patrick Custer. I don't know where to start. I'm a recovering human from lots of things, full of joy, life, and grateful to still be alive after a lot of things that life brings were thrown my way.
Absolutely. And especially as a recovering person, you've got a depth of experience just all around the traumas and the spaces and places that kind of we get nicked up along life.
Yeah.
But you're also a podcast host.
Heck
You
yeah.
have your own show.
Yeah.
So this is probably a little bit of a different dynamic. I'm sure you've been on the opposite side of the mic, if you will.
Yeah.
In other shows, yeah. So thanks for coming on. In fact, I wanted to say, Christina and I, you were in your show was quite a bit of an inspiration for ours and what we've done at Cumberland Heights. So we're literally following your lead because just you have quite a reach and it's very authentic. It's very genuine, and I really admire the environment that you've created on your show. Just job well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, that means the world to me. It's it is what I say. My life's. It's only a portion, like yours. It's only a portion of my job, right? Yeah. And it's become my life's passion project, though. At least right now.
Yeah.
And something that I never knew. I never knew that I would get into, or it wasn't something on a goals board. Right. Yeah. It came out of a need and grew from there and kind of snowballed.
How did you get started?
COVID. Yeah. So, I used to work for Cumberland Heights here, loved it, learned a wealth of wonderful information that made me what I believe to be an effective servant, helping to heal people in the world of treatment, mental health and substance use disorders. And I learned so much while I was here. And
was it your first job in behavioral health?
No, it was right in the middle.
Okay.
Okay. Like a lot of us, I've been to a few corporations, and but I now work for Promises Behavioral Health, and I oversee our national alumni efforts at all our treatment centers, and we've got thousands of alumni cumulatively. And when COVID hit, like I'm sure y'all experienced, all of a sudden you can't do in-person anything anymore. Mm. And it took a while for, as you know, I'm sure everybody knows, it took a while for the support group meetings, the anonymous support group meetings that many of us attend to stay healthy, to get switched over and have virtual access. And so for our alumni, we really, we pivoted quickly like that next week and started the podcast. It was just internal. And we were rolling out one interview every single day.
So were you doing this like at your house?
Yes.
With your iPhone?
Yeah. I mean, thank God for Amazon. We ordered studio equipment and everything like real quick.
Okay.
It wasn't, it was,
And what was the original idea? What need were you filling?
Connection. So, and connection because of stories. So I go back I have to draw from my own experience. I got sober in 2011. And when I got sober, I was in a heavy 12-step program, and, which is, there's literature that we focus on and what have you, as in really any modality that you might get sober in. But I had a really hard time focusing on and absorbing information. So, whatever was needed to be read, whatever somebody might be speaking on, like if we were in groups that was, about a certain part of the book, I'd have a really hard time following along and absorbing the information. 'Cause my brain was still just like garbled, but what I could connect with was when we would go to speaker meetings or somebody from the outside would come and share their story with us. And I might not connect with and take something, their whole story in, but I would take a lot more than I would in step groups, because it was real life experience, right before me of a real life human being, sharing their struggles and their hope. And for whatever reason, that was something that I could really connect to, I could latch onto and think, well, A, that sounds just like my struggles, and B, if there's hope there, and they've got solution. And the struggles are always what, for me, even now, are what like hook me in. That's how reality TV, come on. Like that's why reality TV makes so much money.
It's a drama.
Yeah. And it's what hooks you in, but then you stay around for the solution, and it's like the surprise that you either know or you didn't know you needed, but you're going to get anyway.
Right.
And so people's stories are what I say, and I truly believe, one of the biggest things that made a difference in early recovery for me to be able to latch on to a program for myself and for me to find my own hope.
It's just that raw identification.
Yeah.
So powerful.
Yeah.
Because for any one of us, any number of us, we might not have ever identified or ever found that, we were just talking about it earlier, a safe place to say, wow, these people look different than me. And I, didn't think that I was going to have this experience, but I find myself really connecting. These people are just like me.
Yeah.
In a really an odd way that I hadn't discovered. And it sounds like you discovered in recovery.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah. So you started the show we gotta do something. We need to tell stories, and we need to get it out there.
Yeah.
Because everybody's on their phone in COVID.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were having our own support group meetings regularly, but on top of that, the stories, what I knew were so important.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we were pumping them out, and quickly got a little overwhelmed. And so we pulled back just a little bit. So
What
we
was
weren't
the
doing every
overwhelmed?
day.
Yeah. What was the just...
Why was it overwhelmed?
Yeah.
Well, when I say we, I mean I was
Okay,
overwhelmed.
Gotcha.
It was a lot. I mean, we were talking about before the show, lining people up and making it happen, and we were doing live broadcast. So yeah,
that's a whole different beast. Yeah,
sometimes technology doesn't work the way you want it to, and I didn't have a producer with me at my house, so
shout out Ryan.
Yeah, heck yeah. So we've been through some iterations of what the show looks like, and so obviously it went from just so it was internal and private, and because this was a alumni based thing for us. We had, you think about how many thousands of alumni we have. Well, each of them at that time had, as we do in early recovery or in recovery in general, a huge portion of our inner circle are also recovering people. And so their buddies, their brothers and sisters, are going, oh, do you know of any we're all of a sudden, none of us can do any of our stuff. And like I said, there weren't, it's crazy to think about, because within the following time period, meetings did start. It's hard to think about the fact that there weren't virtual meetings at a certain point, but there really, initially there weren't a lot of resources, and the resources that were there, a lot of people didn't know about. And
that's right.
And so we had a lot of our alumni asking, our friends, our brothers, or sisters are needing support, and they want to come in because of HIPAA compliance. We couldn't,
broadcast the meeting.
No.
Yeah, right.
And so the only way to do it was, we kind of took a deep dive into the logistics of it and realized, well, we can make this an actual public thing. And
it has taken off. Yeah, and it's taken off. And I'm curious about your audience. What have you learned? So growing from just the Promises alumni base, which is strong, as it is here at Cumberland Heights, has your audience changed? Has it
Absolutely.
adapted? And what have you what insights have you gotten from that? It's 3 years now, right? We're in 2023. Is that the right year? Yeah.
It's hard to believe.
It's hard to believe.
We're on up. I think we just released our 117th episode.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I think that something that pleasantly surprised me is that a lot of our viewership now are people that are basically everybody everybody's in some form of recovery and get something out of it. And we focus our podcast on, it's a little bit around everything, because we do a lot of promises from like primary mental health, trauma specific, all the things in addition to addiction. And so our podcast goes even further. So we tell stories of people overcoming adversity in general. So sometimes it's, any form of trauma, all the way straight down to your good old addiction story.
Sure.
And
the classic.
Yeah, the classic.
Yeah.
And I think what people have really connected with for us is just that they're like, people love connecting on healing.
Yes. That's what I was thinking about when you're describing it, is people we're drawn to vulnerability.
Yeah.
And authenticity, and we know it when we see it, we feel it. And especially and I'm no social media expert. In fact, I'm not even on social media, but I do a podcast. I know it's bizarre. I think it's going well, they tell me. So it's kind of nice to be, removed from it.
No, I don't know.
But, and to be honest with you, the reason I got off is because for me, it was just overwhelming at times.
Yeah.
And anyways, all to say, social media isn't full of wellness messages.
Right.
And it's a part of why I think yours is so successful. And what we're trying to replicate is that people are hungry for those heart moments, to identify and to find hope. That might not ever touch promises, might not have anything to do with promises, but
right.
Just kind of on the human condition, connecting in that way is super powerful. And what an awesome kind of medium to do it in,
Yeah. I think that once, we'll get more into my story. Like I said at the beginning, my life's been saved so many times. I know that I feel very strongly that any way, at any time, kind of like in some of our 12-step, when anyone anywhere reaches out their hand for help, I want to be there. I also want to be that conduit for hope and change, to provide a conduit so that people can see the possibility for hope and change.
Yeah.
Or to see that, oh my gosh, I've actually been struggling with symptoms of trauma or these core beliefs that have affected how all of my relationships, my entire life. And I had no idea because I just heard this person's story.
Yeah. It cracks the door.
Yeah.
Just like opens the seal a little bit for somebody to have just an exploration of what that might mean for me, and maybe I should reach out, because we've been getting DMs that I didn't expect.
Yeah.
Of people connecting to it in a different way, or this person went through your program. Can I come on the show? Or
yeah.
I really appreciate this message. It's kind of exponential in that way, and we are in no way like viral or anything like that. We're just doing our little part here in Tennessee to try to tell unique stories of how we changed. So I want to talk about you more.
All right.
I want to talk about your story.
Okay. Yeah.
Because Christina was kind enough to do a little research, and she actually found on our website. Don't be nervous about what we found about you, Patrick Custer, but 2-time customer service award recipient.
It was twice?
2 times in a row.
That's awesome.
Back in 2015 or 14.
Make sure this isn't a soundbite. I'm going to let people promises know.
Absolutely. We'll save that for you to share.
Yeah.
In our admissions call center at the time. So just fill us in on your experience. If you want to start before Cumberland Heights, you can, but certainly want to hear about what happened here and kind of moving forward, because there's been a lot.
Sure. I'm such a chronological thinker, so I'm going to start at the beginning.
Yeah, go.
So I was born in, literally as a baby. Get ready, buckle up. So born in Dallas, Texas, Plano to be exact. Texans will know.
I know. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I lived in Texas once or twice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Moved here when I was 3, so I literally don't remember anything. And Nashville's been home for me. Grew up in Brentwood my whole life. K through 12 was homeschooled. Grew up in a super conservative Christian family. And there was a lot of good that I took from that in my upbringing. I had some super loving parents that, you know, I still have them. I'm fortunate enough that they're still alive. I always like to say, before I kind of go into the dynamic of my dysfunctional family system, that I was raised with two very loving parents that I truly believe were doing the best they could with what they had and what they knew to do. And as they've healed, they've continued to do that same thing. But they're human, just like you and me, and you know, there was some stuff there. And so I was the youngest of 4 kids. And we were raised, like I said, in a super conservative Christian family. I think what most people might describe as a more rigid values type upbringing and what have you. And so a very black and white existence, good versus evil. There wasn't a lot of room for gray when talking about like themes in life for me. So, and for us growing up. And so, you know, I was homeschooled. What's kind of ironic is my sign is I'm a Leo. I'm super outgoing. I'm an enthusiast, a 7 on the Enneagram. I like I get recharged with people. I love doing stuff like this.
Right.
I need very little alone time. So
good for you.
Being in school. Well, thanks. So my 2 older brothers they're so much older than us. They were out of the house by the time we were, my sister and I were growing up. And so we were homeschooled together. So having one other classmate, you know, I was socially starved. You know?
You were.
Yeah. And, but I was a very studious kid, a real good kid. I didn't get in any, that's not true. My mom loves to talk about how I got a spanking every day until I was like 13 years old, but it was because I wasn't a troublesome kid. I was just curious. I was very remorseful, and I wasn't a liar. It was funny. And I say that to set the stage for when addiction stepped in. Again, my mom always talks about how she's like, you'd always tell on yourself. Your conscience would never let you get away with, you know, doing, you know, when you do something wrong. And I think that's one of the reasons why my family knew when addiction really striked for me. Struck. There we go.
Get it.
Yeah. Sometimes those past tense words are hard.
Yep.
And so I graduated from homeschool and went to college. And it was my sophomore year. I got introduced to drugs and alcohol. I mean, it started slow. I think just like it does for many people, not all people, but you know, I grew up in that black and white existence of thinking that all drugs and alcohol were bad. Like there's no room for gray. And I'm not a proponent saying like, you know, there's whatever, but you know, some people are able to live their life and do what they do,
celebrate their tradition. And that's great. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. But I hear you. Yeah.
And so
it's a unique culture in the Southeast, which I think I appreciate that you're highlighting, that I think a lot of people can identify with, you know?
Yeah. I mean, there's, you know, and yes, I'll let that be what it is. And so, but I had this specific viewpoint, especially because, and I'll mention here, you know, we talk about alcoholism or addiction in general being emotional, spiritual, physical malady, right? And the genetic part for me was very strong, comes right down the lineage of my dad's side of the family. So it's already predestined on that side. But I'd always been told, like, you know, my only education was don't ever touch it. You have no business doing it because you'll be just like my oldest brother is also in recovery now. My first 12 years of life, all I remember was him being completely obliterated. Like he stammered.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So those were my images of alcohol, drugs. I just I didn't know that there was an in-between, or that many people experiment and don't end up being alcoholics for the rest of their life, So anyway, I set that stage because I had determined to myself I wanted to be a good person and a good kid, and I never wanted to touch alcohol or drugs. And I don't remember why I ended up making that first decision to do so. But I did. And when I did, I always say that this part is so imperative to me because I never knew how anxious I was. I never knew that I was living with this super high amount of anxiety. When I that night that I had 3 beers the first time I ever tried it. I had what the Bible would describe as peace that passes all understanding. It passed all understanding that I had ever experienced. And at the time, that was terminology that was the closest terminology that I could use to describe my experience. And so I'm going to throw in here too, from a very young age, I don't know why, but my worst fear from one of my earliest memories was that I was going to get a brain tumor and die from cancer. And so I think that was the start of my fear-based decision-making and high anxiety. And so the theme that I took from my first drinking experience was I had peace. I did not want to go drink a million more beers. I didn't feel crazy. It was the opposite from everything that my parents had told me. And so what message did that give me other than maybe I need to test every single worldview that I've been raised with, because what else are maybe they stretching the narrative on? And
now you have some evidence.
Yeah.
We need to experiment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the next my drinking using career, fast, hard, and heavy. It was the next 4 years. And I say it was fast because I think when I look at it compared to most of the people that we help through treatment, my drinking using career feels itty bitty. Mm-hmm. But man, I many times could have, should have died. And probably, the amount of times I drove intoxicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, all the time.
All the time. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And by the time I got sober, I was drinking between a half and a whole handle of whiskey every day. Couldn't sleep more than a few hours without waking up, because I was withdrawing, going into DTs.
Yeah.
Needing some more booze.
Did you graduate college in that time period?
Nope. Mm-mm.
So you've dropped out, I assume.
I did. Well, God, how many times did I drop out? I
gotcha.
did some college, then I I did that whole in and out.
Yep.
And so I ended up getting sober at 24, which was, like I said, February 2011. And miraculously, I was able to stay sober from there.
Congratulations, by the way. It's a big deal,
Yeah.
Where'd you get sober?
Discovery Place out, in Dixon, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. What was it about that experience that you think started you on that journey?
How to get me? Well, so back to my brother. At its inception, my dad was buddies with a lot of the guys that started Discovery Place and ended up on the founding board because they had put my brother through treatment so many times.
Gotcha.
And so when he was on his 7th treatment episode, they had just founded Discovery, and that was, of course, where my parents sent him and where he ended up being able to get sober, stay sober from as well. And at its inception, Discovery Place was very, 1997. It was very unstructured compared to how treatment and how they look today. My brother lived there for a year, and so we were out there every weekend. I mean, I spent my childhood
Okay, so you're very familiar. Yeah.
Very familiar. I remember sitting in the family in their great room or whatever, where the 12 steps were on the wall,
That's
looking at them.
Fascinating, Patrick.
I would read through them as a 12-year-old, going, "What is so wrong with him that he can't? I just did all these steps."
That's just a lot of insight for a child to have.
Yeah.
Just being exposed to that subculture, and I'm because when I got introduced to recovery, I thought thought a meeting was a business meeting. Like I had seen that movie with Sandra Bullock, whatever it was.
Yes, we're very professional in our recovery meetings. At all times.
Yeah, right. And but you have this wealth of knowledge and experience that you were walking around with in your active addiction. Was that accessible in any way?
No.
Did you have any insight into that?
No, because I think that I absorbed. Discovery Place to me was the place that my brother got. So like there was something wrong with him, and they were able to fix him. It was a beautiful piece of land with a nice facility that I like to go to. They had really cute dogs that I'd play with while I was there. A pond that I would fish in. And so it's interesting because I look back. As you asked that question.
Yeah.
No, as a 12-year-old, I did not absorb any recovery-related stuff other than like the things that I enjoyed while I was there, and that they helped fix my brother.
Did you carry any of that forward into your 20s when you were in addiction?
Well, honestly, I think that I was very stubborn initially. The fact that they had the audacity to think that I needed to go to the same place that my brother, who was a F up, went to, and I, had been failing to exert my willpower and just needed to straighten up a little bit.
Right, makes sense to me.
Okay, yeah. I could still form my words.
That's interesting that you say that, that you could still form your words, because one thing that you pointed out directly about your brother when you were a child was that he stammered all the time.
Oh yeah. So
you might have had these kind of pieces of scaffolding that were kind of co-signing
absolutely
addiction of like, well, I have the same experience of like, well, this person over here, I'm not as bad as them, so I can't be.
Well, I was using zero rational thinking as you do.
Right.
Also, I haven't mentioned the fact that I was probably taking a minimum of 250 milligrams of Adderall every day on top of that.
Oh.
Right. So I was essentially speedballing.
Yeah.
And my brother, I don't think, was using any uppers when he was drinking. So, it's a lot easier to not stammer on that amount of alcohol. Because when I got sober, I was drinking the exact same amount as my brother. He, interestingly enough, like today, is a high functioning adult with a lot of kids and provides for them. His first year of recovery, though, like he could barely form sentences. Like we wondered if his brain was pickled. I didn't know at the time what that meant, but I just knew that he was messed up.
Yeah, right.
Right. But he had started. I mean, his story is like he started at like 11 or 12. Back in the day, my dad actually drank. He had given it up by the time I was born. So they had a liquor cabinet, and he had started drinking and then watering down their liquor and all that stuff as a youngster. And it never stopped for him all the way up until he got sober, I think, at 30. Okay. So that was a very long time so the compare and contrast of our drinking, using is a bit different. But I mean, it's crazy because he and I are genetically very similar, and out of all the 4 kids. And so it makes sense that we were the ones that ended up with alcoholism.
Right.
And
So what was it that got you sober?
Sorry, I'm a very thirsty person. So, oh my gosh, I had been, like many of us, living a bunch of lies. You were asking me about school. I have learned this is something that, like, some shame that I have carried and learned to embrace now, and like peel the layer back and just own.
Yeah. It takes time.
I never finished college. I haven't. Life moved forward for me, and I've been working hard and hustling ever since then, and just it wasn't the path for me. Who knows? I might be doing it tomorrow. I don't know. But I say that because at the time I'd been in and out of classes in and out of 3 or 4 different colleges.
Yeah.
I had originally wanted to be a lawyer, and I thought my value and meaning was going to be pulled from me being able to be a litigator, in the courtroom, arguing cases and having myself a feeling of importance. I loved to watch Matlock as a kid, and I thought that would be really cool.
Right.
I could help people and also, have a lot of meaning in my life.
Yeah.
I was a few years into political science, realized that I hate reading and writing.
Well, yeah.
And that's a little essential to being an attorney.
Yeah. I like the way you said that. A little essential. Yeah. Yeah.
Somewhat.
Yeah. Somewhere around there.
Yeah. So anyway, I kind of hopped around not knowing what I was going to do, like many college students do. And I don't remember how I landed at this, but I knew I wanted to find something that was going to provide for me, a job that would provide for me, and be important, all the things. I don't know. Of course, like any great addict / alcoholic, I had this overflated sense of self and needing to prove myself and all the things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And for whatever reason, I ended up realizing I was like, nursing could be it. I'm gonna do nursing. So I'm gonna go into nursing school. I had good grades. Ironically enough, I wasn't flunking out of school.
Yeah, you made it kind of seem okay. Gotcha. Right.
But I would just do a semester here or there, and then I just wouldn't go back.
Yeah.
And so decided on nursing school. Did my prereqs, got great grades. Got denied through the first 2 application processes. Didn't even remember applying the 3rd time because I was at a place of drinking so much that my short-term memory was not great. And I remember getting my acceptance letter and being like, what? I'd kind of let go of hopes for the future. I didn't know what was around the corner. I was literally just working. I was living at mom and dad's house, working, denying my reality, living for the moment. And I remember getting that letter and going, oh my gosh, there's hope for my future. And the wheels started turning, got set in motion and everything. And I go get set up. I get my, my scrubs, all my books, all the things you got to get for nursing school. And I was just like, I remember just feeling like, oh, this is it. This is the answer to, my life's meaning and what I've been waiting for. And mind you, I did not stop drinking and using the Adderall that I was using or anything like that. I mean, I was going to clinicals and classes smelling like a brewery. And that still, you would think that the nursing director would have caught on to that because she was close enough to smell me. But that wasn't what got me kicked out. I was late 3 times in a row by a few minutes, and they weren't having it. And I had never been part of something that was that strict. I couldn't fathom that being 5 minutes late to something, they would just kick you out of the program and you'd have to go through a whole new application process.
Right.
She sat me down. I was like, what? Right. And she took at that point in time, she took all the value and meaning that was left in my life away. And so the shame that followed was so strong that I spent that was within my first month of nursing school. And August or September of 2010. And I spent from then until February of that following year living the charade, but each day literally thinking the next day I'm going to tell my family, I'm going to tell my parents the truth. But I could not face it. I couldn't even face it myself. I would do anything not to think about what had happened.
Oh, they didn't know?
No. I would wake up, put on my nursing school clothes or whatever, and get up, leave, and spend the day driving around or going to somebody's house. My friends didn't even know. The lies would just, this is where I'm talking about the lies started coming out. Because at this point I was full blown addiction. And so even my drinking buddies, I'd be like, oh, I got to go to class, In all reality, I needed people in my life to think that I was going to class, so I would just leave and go somewhere else. It was the most bizarre. I look back and think, wow, what a house of cards I was holding together. So I thought.
Yeah. But I identify so much with that, just these webs of a narrative that we create to co-sign whatever behavior, whatever place that we're in. And it's hard to describe what that feels like when you're driving that ship, because you're aware, but you're just focused on making sure that you're maintaining that story. That's all that matters.
Yeah. I think too, we have to take responsibility for driving the ship, but at the same time, there's more than just us driving it. The disease is really at the helm. And I think that's one of the reasons why, with the clarity that we have now, it's hard to sit back and think I honestly, if I had to come up with some of the stuff, I look back and I think, my gosh, that's so calculated and so I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
Yeah.
But when the brain is a really powerful thing, when it's trying to figure out how to survive, which when you're living under the illusion that survival means continuing down this path of feeling the same way, which means being able to take the same amount of Adderall and get the same amount of alcohol every day, you're going to do anything.
Yep.
Anything. Hurt anybody, do and say things I said I would never do, and then lie to myself about having done them.
Yeah.
And then everybody else.
That's a really great way to describe the disease, because it has nothing to do with the people and places. It has everything to do with filling a need.
Yeah.
A perceived need, which is, I need to be high in some way, right? And that's the most important. That's what people say when they talk about, that's the most important thing in our lives, is making sure that that need is filled. And if the narrative supports that, then we're going to continue to go to class.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%.
So I went to class for some months.
Okay.
And I love how you said that we're going to continue to go to class. Because I went to class for some months. Insert air quotes here. And my dad had a major pulmonary embolism, and for medical speak for a giant blood clot that ran through his lung, and almost took him out. He was in the hospital. I didn't go because I told everybody, this is the time when, at least we had my family, we still had a landline back then, and like a good old Southern family, when there's some sort of family thing going on or a crisis, somebody usually sits at the helm and answers the phone, because everybody from church is going to be calling and whatever. I mean, that's a real thing. But I used that to my advantage, because I knew everybody that had been around me at this point. I was more and more isolated. I was isolating from even my drinking buddies, because they were like, dude, you're either you're not showing up or you're whatever. Anytime somebody would make a comment to me, I'd be like, I got to spend less time around that person or not at all. So I was mostly isolated, and physically I would try to avoid being, you literally in this space right now would be too close for comfort for me, because I had already gotten social feedback from my parents and other people making comments about, how I smelled. Even though I may have showered, I could not shower. You can't shower off a half to a whole handle of liquor coming out of your pores every day. Right. I mean, that you can't. Yeah. And so, I was to the point where there wasn't enough denial in the world that could keep me from at least believing that I needed to stay, that other people weren't, they were going to get in the way. Yeah. So I stayed at home and used that as an excuse to, a quote unquote selfless excuse to help, because there wasn't really anything I could do at the hospital. Yeah. And 3 days in, my siblings came to the house and they sat down and they did an intervention. I mean, there wasn't a professional there, but they did the whole process of, sharing with me their stuff. And I remember one of my siblings said, it's up, buddy. We know you're not in school and the charade's over. mom's not bringing dad, fortunately dad's going to be okay, but she's not bringing him home to you in this. We're going to take you somewhere and you're grown. So the choice is yours. We're either going to take you to treatment or wherever you want to go, but you need to get your stuff together because it's going to be one of those two places. And
it gets me excited. I know that's very strange, but
no, it's not strange at all.
I'm like, let's go. It's change time,
Yeah.
Some straight talk, which is what we need sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that deep down inside that the little boy Patrick just wanted to live a life of joy and connection with others, was just crying out and waiting for somebody to like break through and reach in a hand, and it was a perfect window of opportunity too, honestly. So I said yes. I went to treatment, went out to Discovery Place, and they love, when I tell this story, they love telling this story and also hearing it because they all laugh about it. I was a problematic treatment person.
Were you?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. I thought by just showing up to, where I was supposed to be, which they all have different accounts of my time there.
I see. Yeah.
And I think many of them would say that I wasn't where I was supposed to be on time, given my track record. Might be true. But I think that I was where I was supposed to be on time. But apparently I wore my pajamas and bathrobe everywhere. And I don't know. I was just like a mess of a human and didn't follow any of the rules and acted like I didn't care. And I thought that it was enough just to show up.
Yeah.
I was also so full of like the semantics of it all. Everybody would go around in group and say, I'm so-and-so, I'm an alcoholic. And because I'm still living in this world where, yes, I have a problem, but it's a willpower problem, right? So I'm not going to say I'm an alcoholic, but you're all saying it, and I'm going to get in trouble if I don't. So I would say, I'm Patrick, alcoholic. I'm not saying I'm an alcoholic.
Oh, I see. I like
so
that.
It makes a
Little
difference.
Catch. See, we wouldn't catch that.
Right.
Traditionally in group, I'd be like, oh, Patrick's participating, but
right.
in your mind, you were disconnected for sure.
So stupid.
Yeah.
And it's funny now that I look back and I'm able to laugh about it because obviously like I was able to stay sober and things turned out the way they did. But fortunately I was where I was supposed to be with the people in leadership over me that needed to be, because 2 weeks in, here's the fun thing. When you go into treatment, just like here, everywhere else, they ask you have any legal stuff? Like, we need to know. You in trouble with the law at all? And I think I had told them like one or two of the things. Here's the thing. I had racked up so much stuff. Like, I had been pulled over, I think 18 times in the 6 months leading up to going into treatment.
Yeah.
And so there was something that I hadn't dealt with or showed up to court for, and because I was just a mess. And anyway, my parents got the Williamson County Sheriff's showing up on their doorstep, and while I was in treatment, serving a warrant for my arrest. And so they, reached out to the treatment team at Discovery Place. And I don't know what I've never thought to talk to them about what that conversation was like. Because it was honestly it was very pivotal in me having this radical acceptance moment where I would say it was a burning bush moment that led me to radical acceptance and surrender. Because they sat me down, this is 2 weeks into treatment, and they're like, this is what happened. Carla and Dwight just got the Williamson County Sheriff at their front door. And, this was super overwhelming. You lied. You're the bad apple of the bunch. We don't know if we're going to keep you here. Because there's not a point if you're going to taint the rest of the treatment experience for everyone else. And
so they used it as leverage with you.
Oh, yeah.
That's
and it
interesting.
Worked.
That's really interesting. Because at first I was like defensive, like they were shaming you, and I'm like, how dare they? But really, they used it as leverage to motivate you to buy in. It
scared the snot out of me. And fortunately, I didn't take it from some place and decide to be some big victim. Thank God,
Yeah.
It scared me. I mean, and it scared me into a place of, because they left it saying like, we don't know what we're going to do, but you've got some thinking to do on what you want. Because if for some reason we decide to let you stay, we need to know and we need to see that you want it. And at that time, all I knew was I don't know what wanting it looks like, but I know I want to figure it out.
Yeah, right.
So from that point forward to this day, I have remained determined to wake up every day trying to figure out what wanting it looks like.
Right. Which is surrender.
Yes.
That's what, people think about surrender as, stop fighting, but sometimes surrender can be, channeling our energies towards something else. Earlier today, we were talking about, that moment when you stop running away from addiction and you start running towards recovery. That can be surrender too.
Absolutely.
It's just buying into the surrender of, hey, recovery is an active change in my ideas and my attitudes.
Yeah.
And like the pit of our stomachs, like recognizing that can be really motivating, to start listening in group in a different way, or taking the suggestions to meet with the alumni director, or going to the events and introducing yourself.
Oh yeah.
It's tough, but it's a key to freedom for sure. One of them.
It is. And it changed everything for me. I mean, now did it make was everything sunshine? No,
yeah, of course.
There's so much to my story, and I want to think about what's pivotal.
Tell me about the link between you getting into the field and early recovery.
Oh my gosh.
We can jump. 'Cause I'm so curious.
I would
about
not
that.
recommend it. So now what I would recommend is they did Bite After Bite for me, which was at the end of residential. They were like, we think you should do our extended care program, which was basically residential light.
Yeah.
So I did that for an additional 3 months. So 4 months of living in, the
compound.
Yes. And after that, moved to a halfway house. The halfway house owner was like, I want to start a treatment center. You want to do it with me? And I was like,
kidding.
Yeah. Well, actually, he asked me to be the halfway house manager first.
Okay.
And I was like,
we got to make sure you can do that.
I have some responsibility.
We'll start a treatment center. Yeah.
And so that ended up being Freeman Recovery. I don't know if you are familiar, but about a year in, I was like, this is too much for me. I think I need to focus on myself. I was 24/7 in a startup is not something I would recommend for anybody in early recovery, especially working with other people in early recovery.
Right.
But it's crazy how I thought in early recovery, I mean, when I look at the time frame of 4 months right now, it looks so much smaller to me than what 4 months looked like back then.
100%.
And so, I mean, I'm thinking like, I've got a resume. You guys don't even know,
Yeah.
You seen all this work I've done so far?
Yeah.
And so, fortunately I stayed sober through it, but, I continued that. The decision-making process for me was, as things came along, I took what was offered to me, because it still fell into the framework of what was true to the core of who I am. I always wanted to do something that involved helping other people and making a difference, and something that literally involved like working with people. I love working with people. And so this, checked off the boxes. And so from there, I ended up leaving Freeman, went to Discovery Place, and started their volunteer and alumni initiatives, and stayed there for about 2 years, and then came here. I was here for 2 years. Yeah. It's hard to, I look back and I think, my gosh. And it was crazy for me because I remember coming here feeling so scared because Cumberland Heights was this name that I like to be revered. I was like, Cumberland's like the Vanderbilt of treatment centers, you know?
Right.
I was nervous as heck.
I thank you on behalf of Cumberland that you would say that, but I think that we're trying really hard. Sometimes, let me just be really transparent with you. Sometimes it's easy to be a legend in your own mind. And I think Cumberland, we actually just celebrated our Founders Day on the 25th, 57 years.
That's awesome.
Which is wild. And, we were the first, if not one of the first treatment centers in Tennessee way back in 1966. And so, but none of that, we're so grateful for that history, but that doesn't help in terms of the patients that are today and kind of preparing for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so I think it's special that one of the things I love about Cumberland Heights, among just the altruistic fact that we help people, about 2,000 people a year, try to navigate away from addiction, period, full stop, is the professionals that have been touched by Cumberland.
Yes.
Like all the people in this community that have worked in this organization that are now going on and doing really amazing things in other places. And so I'm grateful that that was a little bit a part of one of your stops too.
100%. I always say that I think the greatest chunk of my foundational education in treatment education work was here. I wholeheartedly believe that.
I love seeing some of your colleagues too. Shout out to Robin Figlio. Sort of hearing this morning, like, I heard Patrick Custer's going to be here. And I was like, well, come. He'll be here at 3. Come by and say hello. And so she's just excited. It's a unique environment for sure. There's a lot of folks that used to work here or still do work here in some cases. Yeah.
It's a special place, and I have so many wonderful memories here. I mean, when it snows here, which in Nashville, it's like the global warming. It's not as common as it used to be. But I would be oh, it's gonna snow. Okay, I'll take a shift because I was so pumped about getting stuck here. Because at the time I was like, yes, I'll get to work. I will get to go sledding on awesome hills when the time's appropriate. And
of course. Eat some great food potentially.
Eat at the buffet. Eat all the things.
Like, what else do you need?
I honestly nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So,
And you were here with some cool. It was a unique time period too in terms of some of the folks that were working here and
absolutely.
So what happens after Cumberland? Why'd you leave?
Well, I'm just kidding. Usually that's the answer to the story for people. A growth opportunity. Yeah. I knew that I had been feeling it in my heart for some time that I wanted to move into business development. And I had narrowed down between the current company I work for and one other place as being if it was going to be outside of Cumberland, being the two organizations that I was okay with transitioning into. And one of them offered me a job, and the door, just like so many of the things in my path of my professional career, the right door opened when it was supposed to. Yeah. And but it was scary because I had never worked. We're a for-profit organization. I had never worked for profit before. Even before I got sober, I'd always worked for nonprofits. So this leap of faith, like jumping ship to go work for, that was scary for me.
Of course, yeah.
And but it turned out great. Interestingly enough, I started off by telling you that, my biggest, greatest, baddest fear was that I was going to get a brain tumor and die. Well, I leave here, and, as Robin was telling you earlier, I would come get her from the admissions office, and we'd go on our walks, and I'd be like, my head feels funny. And she'd be like, it's your allergies. Just get over it. And
that's actually exactly what she said.
Mm-hmm,
yeah. But continue.
Yeah. And Yeah, I was gonna say there's some other people, lovely people who said the same thing. Brittany Hines and oh my gosh, was Kathy Knox still here when you came on board?
She wasn't, but I remember Kathy Knox because she was my financial advisor when I was a patient here.
Nice. Okay, yeah. So well, you know her, yeah. So sugar honey sweetie pie.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, she gave me the whole like, oh, okay, because at the time she was my supervisor,
yeah.
And she probably didn't. I don't know, but. I left here. It was very shortly after I left that I was working for, at that time, our company was called Elements. It's now called Promises. We went through a name change, rebrand, and got diagnosed with a brain tumor. And there's a lot of stuff surrounding all of that. It didn't end up being cancer, but it's what the original prognosis or diagnosis, what they thought it was. And thank God that's not what it was. But I had so many secondary complications. I was in and out of the ICU for the next 6 or 7 months, and really should have died. Like of all the times I should have died, it was during this period. I got, for those of you who may know what it is, I got MRSA in my head. Methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. It's a really hard grouping of words to say, but I've cracked it, I think. Really dangerous form of staph that just invades the body, and a lot of people don't recover from because it goes systemic. But I got it in my head, and it was nearing it was about to cross the blood-brain barrier, in which case it's lights out. And so I had to have multiple brain surgeries because it kept happening over and over and over, and my brain wasn't healing. My spinal fluid was leaking out, and it was so many things.
Good grief, Patrick.
Yeah. Scary. It was like the scariest, loneliest time of my life. And because it was infection.
Ask how you were, like what was your mindset? I mean, that sounds
time-wise. So let's see so I got sober in 2011. So it's 2016. It's 5-ish years. I'm terrible at math, but whatever. So it's that much time sober. Fortunately, I had enough of a foundation of sobriety, and what I would say is good sobriety. And I had been very plugged in at that point, and went into surgery and this whole process with a sponsor. I had fully worked the steps. I was, doing all the things that was recommended of me to do to be healthy. And I think it is a big reason why I was able to maintain sobriety. Gosh, it's crazy. That event was so, a lot of times people talk about like BC AD a time period. For me, for Patrick Custer's life, everything for me is pre and post brain tumor. Chronologically, like that's just
absolutely. I mean, I just can't imagine what that must have been like. Just all the fear, especially that you had that thought as a child, which is bizarre.
Yes.
And just, you must have been completely overwhelmed at times.
Well, I was, and especially because you get the news, like initially I went into it thinking, okay, it's crazy. They gave me the news and said, we need you back here tomorrow. We're going to start testing, and we'll probably have brain surgery by the end of the week. And I'm going, well, okay. But there's, people have benign tumors all the time. I was like, my doctor's daughter has one. I knew that. And I was like, and they were like, they kept taking away every ounce of hope I had. They were like, she was like, sweetheart, I believe with you that we're going to have some good news, but it's not what it looks like. Like, I remember, like, I kept trying to be like, yeah, but. And she was like, but I need you to know that this is not what we think it is.
Yeah.
What this looks like is a very aggressive form of cancer that starts in your spine, and by the time it's in your brain, it quickly metastasizes through the rest of your body. So I spent that next 2 weeks waiting for pathology to come back, thinking that this is what this was. then I get the news that it's not cancer. Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. And it was about a week later that I ended up back in the hospital because for emergency brain surgery because the back of my head was about to explode. And so that happening over and over again brought this whole different level of fear, trauma, disassociation. I mean, the brain does crazy things just to be able to survive. So by the time the last time I was in the hospital was the time I was clinging on to dear life. It was 45 days straight that I was in the ICU. And at that point, every single person, I wasn't allowed to have visitors. I was allowed to have 3 visitors, my now husband, my parents, and that's it. And the medical staff, I guess actually, and my family. I remember my parents complaining about the stupid aprons they had to put on, but they did the full hazmat stuff when they'd come in the room.
To protect you because of the infection, yeah.
And at this point, I remember my parents are people of faith. Like, I remember when I saw that light of hope leave my mother's eyes, and it was more of a like detaching. That was the loneliest. And I hesitate when saying this because I'm like always so terrified that she's going to hear me say this and feel bad, but it wasn't her fault. Like, it was the natural process of feeling like we're losing him and it's too hard to, because I was back and forth from almost leaving this earth, like constantly. And they would come visit, as many days as they could when they'd come, maybe like for an hour. And the rest of the time I was spending completely alone. Because there wasn't any, you come at this point, what are you going to talk about? And, right. And so
nothing to do.
There's a lot of me and God. And dealing with the questions that I left unanswered and figuring things out. But I walked away from that whole experience, obviously alive. My brain healed itself, and I had a wonderful care team that was able to fix me and get me right. But I walked away from that with nothing but gifts and a completely renewed, different outlook on life that I could have never had without something forged. Like, what is it that is diamonds are forged out of
pressure?
This perspective that I was gifted, I think, was forged in the same way that me explaining it can't even give you the insight that I actually experience and walk in life today. So I know that, and I realize that, and I feel like I'm one of the few people that really get to live life on like the way that I appreciate days is so different. And that's what fuels me when I talk about wanting to do whatever I can to be a catalyst for change in the world and in other people's lives.
You've got a lot of resilience. I mean, addiction's one thing, because 1 in 10, right? People experience addiction.
Oh, yeah. Which statistic are we talking about? There's a lot of them. Yes.
Well, and so sometimes when people hear about addiction, it's this, oh my gosh, my brother experienced that, or my cousin. But, that's one thing. But to overcome, as you said, cracking your head open multiple times and having, that's a tremendous amount of resilience. And I can understand, I can't understand going through that experience, but from a recovery perspective with addiction and isolation, so to speak, like, I can understand wanting to fan the flame for other people of, it's not every day, Patrick, for me, but hopefully most days I wake up with gratitude.
Yeah.
And like just a different step before kind of that. I like the way you talked about like AD and BC, because I think so many people's lives center around just a few events.
Sure.
Whether that's, the death of a loved one or, the transition, in their life professionally, whatever, who cares? But recovery can invite you to live a different life. And I think if you allow it to, it can color a lot of joy, that I didn't expect, that we don't expect, and I see that in you. I see the light in you. I didn't know the story about brain cancer. Robin let the cat out of the bag, which I'm upset about. I wish you could have just dropped it on me live. But I had no idea, I didn't know that piece of your story, and I just thought that's quite literally unbelievable that you've had that experience. So
it was, when I tell it, I'm like, this is a pretty crazy story. Sometimes I look back, the farther and further I get from that time period, I look back and I'm kind of like, wow, I lived that. Because, fortunately today, like I go get my annual brain scans, and praise God, I'm like,
and you got a great head of hair.
Thanks.
For those that are just listening, stellar, great head of hair.
Yeah. As do you.
Yeah. Thank you.
I appreciate that compliment because, obviously coming from a guy with a good head of hair,
It's a responsibility that we bear, really.
It is.
Like we take it on and we trudge forward. A lot of people always comment. Anyways, it's a weird. Yeah.
Listen, I may love serving other people and helping other people and want to do good work in my life. And, I think about this comedian that I just interviewed. She says, you can save the soul, but you can't save the mouth. And I'm like, for me, you can save the soul, but for me, you ain't kicking the vanity out. It's still there. And
it's okay. Yeah. Hey, that's okay. You know?
It's, you just got to keep it in check a little bit.
So where's Patrick Custer going next? Where's the show going next?
You are the second person to ask me this week, and I don't remember last time I've been asked that. And the answer is
Maybe
I
there's
don't.
some movement.
I don't.
Maybe the universe is trying to tell you something.
I feel like the universe is trying to tell me something, and I don't know what that answer is. And what I'll say is that just like the rest of my life, I've never been a vision board person.
Right.
I've never been this is what I want to do in 5 years. I love the whole like tenets of recovery about living in the moment because I love that. I've never liked the thought of staying in the past or future tripping. Like I don't feel at peace there, and I love feeling at peace. So anyway, I know it's good to think ahead, but
But you're along for the ride. Yeah,
I'm along for the ride. So if you get some news and know before me, we'll exchange numbers after this, and shoot me a text. Let me know what it is, and I'll be excited to find out.
Well, what I do know is that you have a gift in community. See, you're an extrovert, and I think I'm probably like a secret introvert. People don't peg me as that, but you have a gift. You really do, for allowing people to tell their stories on your show. And thank you for taking time to come on ours here in support of Cumberland. But
yeah,
I would suspect that wherever you go, you're going to be surrounded with people and bringing hope, So it's good stuff. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you. This has been lovely.
Yeah. We'll see you next time.